Hello, everybody. Welcome to 3 Point Perspective, the podcast about illustration, how to do it, how to make a living at it, and how to make an impact in the world with your art. I'm Jake Parker.
I'm Lee White.
And I'm Will Terry. And all three of us are professional illustrators. We've all worked for all the major publishers in the business. Together, we've published somewhere around 75 children's books, and we've all taught illustration at university art programs.
That's right. Each week we come at you guys with great listener questions or fantastic illustrator interviews. Sometimes we agree, sometimes we argue, but each time you learn something brand spanking new.
Brand spanking new. So last week I reposted Samantha Cotterill's episode because we were busy doing all the stuff we had to do last week. So we did like our first sort of archive, pull episode out of the archives. We have enough episodes now that like you could pull an episode out and people haven't heard it. And it's like their first time hearing it. So it was really cool to revisit that and get like feedback from like fresh feedback on that episode. And I don't know if you remember that one specifically, but she's that illustrator that, does like the cutout illustrations, and then photographs them for Will, you weren't on that interview, but
she was fantastic. She was great.
Yeah, and so I actually want to. She commented on the YouTube post for the episode, just kind of checking in and saying, "Yep, still not using social media. Career's still going good. Got a new book coming out.
Oh, good."
And I'm thinking maybe we should have her back on just to get an update interview if you guys are cool with that.
Yeah, I'd love to.
Maybe we'll have Will interview her this time.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
So let's do a quick check-in. What are you guys working on? Personal projects, how that's going, and then we'll move forward on the questions for today. You want to go first, Will?
Go ahead, Will.
Oh, go ahead, Lee.
I was just going to say, I can't remember if I did my Instagram analogy with the violinist.
No, let's hear that.
Didn't? Okay, so I want to preface what I'm doing with this little story I saw on Instagram. I mean, rarely do I like stories on Instagram, like those little motivational kind of stories or whatever. But this one was a good one. It was a business little video clip, but it was the I think it was, I'm going to probably mangle the actual facts here, but in my head, it's the violinist for the New York Philharmonica. Philharmonica. They should have a harmonica. That's the Nashville version of that, the Philharmonica. Okay, so they got the violinist for the New York Philharmonic, and he goes down to the subway and plays violin worth $3.5 million. And he plays for like 2 hours, and he gets like $20 in tips. And the point was, it doesn't matter how good the product is if it's in front of the wrong people. And I was like, oh my God, I was actually sort of blown away. I had to pause it. And I was like, oh my God, that is really, really good. He's like, it doesn't matter what the product is. If it's in front of the wrong people, you will not make sales. So fast forwarding to kind of how that relates to my kind of situation. At the end of the year, I started looking really at how advertising is working and what my products are doing. I told you guys I'm starting a paper company and getting into that. So I've been really, really pushing Valentine's cards and making a lot of new work, and then also pushing my old work, and then really looking at how advertising works within Instagram and Facebook. And and what I concluded is Instagram is good for getting new followers and likes. But it is not good for getting actual sales. So I went over to Etsy. I have an Etsy store that's been going for a long time. And it sort of just kind of putters along. It's not making me a ton of money, but it does make some. So I just kind of keep it open. So I started advertising on Etsy, started advertising on Pinterest. And we have sold over 3,000 cards.
What?
Yeah, since December.
That's crazy.
On Pinterest.
Now, hold on. Is this are these individual card sales, or are you selling them in like packs?
Both. We do individual card sales and then packs of 6 and packs of 12. But it's just crazy how many people.
What time frame is that 3,000?
It's from the beginning of December to now.
Wow.
So at first it was Christmas cards, and then it shifted.
Like a month and a half.
I don't think that's going to continue, But that shift was literally because I heard that I saw that Instagram video. And I was like, I don't think I'm in front of the right people for the right thing.
Exactly.
And anyway,
Right.
so I've been making new imagery. I have one more card that I'm doing this week, and then I'm shifting gears to my tarot deck, which the Kickstarter's starting in September. And so I got to crank on that. I got so much to do. But anyway, there's a lot more plans I'll share later with how I'm going to expand the paper company to include some international artists that don't have a presence over here. And so I'll share that later.
Love it.
But anyway, a lot of stuff cooking.
And it's called Drifting Moon.
Drifting Moon Press. Yep.
Drifting Moon Press.
Yeah. I don't even have the
that's
website up. I have the domain name, but I don't have the website up yet.
Do you have to catch it and stop it from drifting ever? Or?
Oh yeah. You got to damn it. Just keep drifting.
So, all right. Where are you getting your cards printed?
I use Smart Press. I've used a bunch of different places over the years, but I'm not sponsored by Smart Press. I'm not trying to advertise for them, but they're good. What I like about them is they reasonable prices, but the quality is really high, and you can pick so many different papers. You know how normally you can pick like, glossy or matte. That's your sort of choices.
Yeah,
right.
Maybe there's one or two thicknesses, and this one you can pick. You can pick canvas, you can pick linen, you can pick all kinds of stuff. Oh, there's Jake showing the different paper samples.
The
their
sample
color,
pack.
yeah, their color has been super accurate. I used to use Overnight Prints. I'll tell you this, they have gone downhill like no company I've ever seen. I use them for years for my postcards only because of two things. They offer free rounded corners, or maybe it's like $7 or something like that, but rounded corners, which I like on postcards. And they also offer a spot varnish, which looks really cool. The color that they have been doing for the past, I've been printing the same postcard for them. I put them in the back of my prints and stuff for years. I mean, like probably 5 years, at least 6 years, maybe longer. It's the same image. It's the same file. And I got it back, and it was like, it's normally like a sepia tone or like a brown base. It was bright pink. And I sent it back. I send them the image with an old card in the middle of it, and it's just like this glowing pink. And I was like, "Hey, this color is." I mean, I'm good with colors shifting because I'm not crazy. I'm not one of those crazy people that it has to match every time perfectly. But I was like, "This is so bad, I can't use it." And then
you
they
didn't
sent me
order pink cards.
Yeah, I mean, the image has no pink in it, just to give you some reference. And so I ordered it again, and they send me the next batch bright pink again. I was like, hey, this doesn't work. Please check the file. And I showed them the image again of the old card next to the new cards, and they called it color drift. And then they sent me another one, and it wasn't as pink, but it was still pretty pink. I'm never using them again. That's it. Three strikes,
So
you're
they-
out.
That's wild.
So they went down overnight?
Well played.
Sorry, I couldn't help it.
I don't know what happened because for years they were good. I mean, you couldn't tell the difference from one print run to the next because if it was the same file, I never knew which box I was even getting it from. They were that accurate, and it's just a mess.
I wonder. There's a ton of. There's just been this big shakeup in like the printing world since COVID, because I've been listening to. I listened to an interview with a guy who runs a press out of California, and he's like, during COVID, there was less demand for printed goods, so paper companies ordered less paper supplies, right? Essentially, the paper manufacturers sort of shifted gears from we're going to print 8.5 by 11 letter paper for offices, since no one's going to be in the office and no one's needing printed stuff. And we're going to shift to making toilet paper, right? So that's where the demand is. So what happened was some of these presses shifted gears like that. Then the printer companies, the people who actually need the paper, couldn't get the paper that they needed, and some of them went out of business. Now, the ones that were able to stay in business could now charge a little bit more because there's more demand, right? So that rose prices up. But then what also rose prices up was there just wasn't paper available. And so when they would get paper, they would hold on to more stock of paper in their warehouse, whereas they would usually have, a few pallets on the floor. They'd just be building up because they didn't know when they would be getting paper again, right? So now they're like having to pay, they're sort of raising prices because of all the stock that they have. Electricity prices went up. What was it? Labor went up, just through inflation and all that. So essentially that's why, and then also ink, because there was less demand for ink, there was like a shortage of ink. This was also like shipping supplies. And we're still here in 2024, kind of like still trying to equalize from all that shakeup a couple of years ago. And so I wonder if like this printer switched, like if it's still the same face, but the whole back end got, they could have gotten bought out and replaced with different machines or different companies doing it, but they still have like the same front and whatnot. And I wonder if that's what's going on there.
I mean, maybe they cheaped out on, to run a press that big where they're doing that much turnaround that quickly, you got to have a master in charge of that printer. And if you scrimp on that guy, you're in big trouble because there's so much stuff coming through, and it does shift. I've had jobs go dark because the job in front of mine used a lot of ink. Like they were printing something black, and then all of a sudden that heaviness kind of landed on my job too. So you just got to have somebody who knows what they're doing. So maybe they don't. I mean, maybe they got the the owner's son in there after school job.
Right. Slap the ink in there, push the button.
It's fine.
Don't color check. Will and I, we used a printer in Utah, Press Media, and they went out of business. They couldn't stay in business through COVID for whatever reason. So that was kind of sad because I really loved working with them.
Yeah, they did a lot of good work.
Do you know what happened? What went down there at all? Or
I don't. I just know they were on thin margins, and I know I had talked with the owner a few times, and he was always looking to get into different things. He's an investor.
Yeah. Well, I know the American printers are having a rough go at it, trying to compete with the printers in China because they just can't compete with the printers in China. It's impossible.
Right. Well, I think China must have just had their. I think their presses just stayed making. Not presses, but like their manufacturers just kept making paper. So they have all the paper they need, and they don't have a short supply over there. They have all the labor they need. And, I was reading up on, because I got a quote from my printer here in Phoenix for books, and the books were coming out at like $12 a piece. And when you're selling them for 25 or 26, like... that is not, you can't essentially sell these wholesale because you won't make any money, right? And usually I like to keep my costs as a creator at a quarter of the retail price, right? So I went back to this printer that I'd worked with in the past, and I went on their website and I was like, let's really see if these guys are legit. And they're doing all the things. They're recycling their ink. They're using paper that's sourced from farms and not like wild growth trees, right? They're dotting all their I's, they're crossing all the T's. Their facilities look like clean, and they're doing it. And so I felt a lot better working with these guys. And I got a quote. It was like $2.50 a book.
Right. I mean, what do you do?
If I could save $10 on a book, what are you going to do? Mm-hmm. Especially when you have kids who need new shoes and food in their mouth, right? So that's what we're doing there.
I mean, it's really hard to be a small business owner. If you haven't tried it, you don't really understand all the attacks, all of the fees, all of the licensing, all of the taxes, all of the services that you need to buy.
Yeah, I mean, when you guys see, if you've never run a Kickstarter, you can never appreciate how that really works. I mean, like, for example, I used BackerKit as a advertising partner when I did a Kickstarter, and at the beginning, it was favorable towards the numbers, towards sales and stuff. But at a certain point, every single sale they made them money and made me no money. But it actually cost me money because I still had to ship the product. But if you're a consumer and you're just looking at my campaign, you're like, oh, he's making a ton of sales here. Must be making a lot of money. And at the end, I wasn't making any money.
Right. And part of that, just to go into a little nuance without spending a little time, some of the marketing people's thoughts on that is that if you have a second product to follow it up with, it's still worth it because you're basically buying a larger list for the next thing that you launch.
Correct.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
Which
There's
is
a reason
true
to do it.
if you do have the next thing that will feed that specific audience. Mm-hmm. And if you're even thinking of a third one, like a good case study would be how to think when you draw, right? So like in the early Kickstarters, if you're breaking even on, but you're growing this huge list, it can really pay off in future years. But again, it's still really tough to make a living so you got to get your costs down.
The good news is this is like the next course we're making is Self-Publishing Pro. It's like, how do you navigate all of this? If you're like always wanted to make your own book and sort of own the thing 100% that you're creating, but you had no idea where to start, you don't know, the end point, the beginning point, but you have no idea how to get from point A to point B. That's why we're making this class, is to like essentially share everything that we've learned from all the Kickstarters we've done, all the self-publishing that we've done, and give it to you in like, these little bite-sized chunks, and just say, do this first, do this next, and then also offer like a community of people who are going through the same process too, so that you can ask questions and get feedback and stuff like that. So
that was good. That was an unintended commercial.
Right. Well, and that's why we weren't available last week, because we're hard working on this thing.
Yeah.
But Will, how's your project coming along?
Going good. I'm working on a card game. I'm totally finished with all the art. And I've realized once again, I already knew this, but it's just reiterated again, that it's like 20%, 15% making art, mm-hmm. and 85% selling it, making, doing all the back end business,
all the other stuff,
which is at first was really disappointing to me, that in order to do well, I had to, learn all these other tasks and do all these mm-hmm. other tasks and everything. But in the end, the freedom to move fast, like mm-hmm. to get an idea, and to be able to be your own art director, to be able to see your vision through. I mean, we're living in a time where you can do that. I grew up in a time where you couldn't do that. Right. I mean, we all started in a time where if you had an idea for a game or a book, you had to approach a gatekeeper and say, I have this idea. What do you think?
Right. And give me 5% of this idea that I came up with.
Yeah. Right. And it's thumbs up or thumbs down. It's a yes or a no. And they're really, really just, unless you came from money, unless you had deep pockets, deep pockets, it was impossible. Right. And so I am loving it. I'm loving the ideas that come, and that I can just roll with it. So I'll be launching my Kickstarter in May, and I'm doing all the groundwork right now, getting ready for that, leading up to that. Mm-hmm. So every day I'm checking off things on my list that are preparatory for getting a really good launch.
Yeah, that's cool. And Will shared with us like this artwork that he had made for it, and it is absolutely like
it's amazing. I told Will it's so good that I can't even make fun of him for it. That's how good it is.
Right.
There's nothing I can say.
There's no joke.
I'm normally quick with a witty little jab, but I had to step back and just say, "Hey, man, that's nice. That's really nice."
Yeah.
Well, thanks.
So what I've got going on is I am grinding on this robots book to get it out. I had to push back my delivery date because of just we had a really busy last couple of months with my wife being sick and my kid getting married, and then throw on top of that this printer sort of coming back with this horrible quote. And they were going to be, the nice thing was going to be like a 3-week turnaround, because they're in my backyard, and send the files, they print them, I pick them up. So now going into China, it's like deliver the files and wait, 90 days for that book to get printed and shipped back over. So push all that back, but I'm still working on this thing. And I did that thing that we talked about in Self-Publishing Pro in that first lecture, where you really chart out how much time your project's going to take. And I went through each page, and I just estimated, okay, this page is going to take, 8 hours. This page is going to take 3 hours. This one, not much work to do on it, another half hour. And I did that for the whole thing. You can see it here. I just went down the side of it. I added up all the time, hours that I estimated. I looked at how much time I have per week between now and my delivery date. And I realized, okay, if I work Saturdays, I will get this thing done right on time. So that's where I'm at with that. That still leaves, of course, time to finish up Self-Publishing Pro and do all my SVS responsibilities. Not trying to get out of work here, you guys. But so that was good. It felt good to instead of having that be nebulous, have it be really solid. And that's something, again, I don't want this to be shilling for Self-Publishing Pro, but we dig into that really deep on that lecture about how do you schedule out your projects so you can finish on time. So anyways, so there's that. And then the rest of the year is looking like I said this before, I've got this graphic novel project on my plate. Still haven't gotten a contract for it yet. But that should be coming. I'm hoping in February at some point. I'd just like to get that. They're sort of figuring out things on their end. So that's going to be the next project as soon as I deliver this project. So, and then
awesome.
I would like to put out that planner that I printed, that digital planner I put out. I would like to make a print version, maybe kickstart that and see if people are interested in that.
That'd be cool.
Yeah. All right, guys. Should we dig into these questions?
Let's check them out.
Okay. This comes from Thaddeus. Subject line: market search, microscope or telescope? Okay. So he says, when trying to sell your art, is it better to narrowly target a specialized market or broadly shop your stuff anywhere? I have regularly, this kind of goes with Lee's violinist approach. I think we already answered this question, but he says, I've regularly submitted cartoons to the New Yorker for about 2 years. It has an open submission policy. While thus far unsuccessful, focusing on this goal has some benefits. My drawing has improved. Shout out to the School of Visual Storytelling. Thank you.
Nice.
And I've produced a lot of finished work. The finished work, however, is quite niche. Dozens or single-paneled black and white gag-style cartoons. You know the kind you see in the New Yorker, right? They only consider print-ready first-run material, and then the review process takes a minimum of 6 months. Once rejected, I have no idea what to do with my cartoons. Would an agent help? Should I limit my submissions to work on other projects? Is this style of art just dying form that has few markets? Help me, Obi-Wan Kenobi. You're my only hope. He sent a link for us to look at his art, but we can't share it because it is under NDA, I guess. And I actually am having a hard time getting that page to load, but I can probably get the idea of if it's New Yorker style cartoons.
It sort of is. It opened on my.
It
opened on my machine pretty quickly. Will, did yours open?
It did. Yeah.
It's okay. I mean, it leans. Are we talking his portfolio? Is that what we're going to do right now? Because I don't want to answer the wrong.
Well,
question.
I think let's just get to the question. Is it better to narrowly target? Should he still be making these cartoons for the New Yorker and trying to get that gig, or should he go broad? I think there's more than just there's the surface question, and then there's a deeper underlying question, right?
Yeah. Let me.
Of course, that's what I was wondering. Yeah,
answer?
which one do we do? I think.
Let's say you're. Oh, But,
Go ahead.
Well,
Go ahead,
let me
Will.
just say this really quick.
Go, Will.
Let's say you're successful, and the New Yorker says yes to one of these cartoons. What do they pay? $500,
Yeah.
$1,000. Then what? And the thing is, it's like lightning striking, right? Like there's so many people submitting. So if that's the goal, they're not going to just keep publishing your work. They publish a lot of different people. Sure, there's repeat work, but there's still not there's not a career working, doing cartoons for the New Yorker. And that's what
There's a career for like 5 people.
Right.
And so
Right.
so it's so focused that I think it's a real risk to just go that narrow for me.
Well, but
What do you think,
there's
Lee?
something to be said. If you get hired once for the New Yorker, you will get hired by other companies as well, because it that signifies a certain threshold of your work. Right. And so
Yeah.
you're not going to make a living from just doing the New Yorker, of course, but I think it there's a threshold there, and it just means you are publishable by other companies. Do you guys hear, by the way, that Sports Illustrated went out of business?
No, really?
Yeah, I saw it this week. I mean, that used to be a huge place for illustrators to get work, mainly like CF Payne and those guys from that era. It was just a big kind of showcase for illustration, and it's gone now.
They went really political, and I think they offended a lot of their followers, a lot of their.
I
It
think
was
there's
less about the
probably a little of
sports.
that, but it's. I mean, who reads magazines anymore? I think that's the bigger problem, because you look at other magazines that have nothing to do with that; they're also struggling. I mean, it's just not a good time to be a magazine publisher, I think. But yeah, you better get your content right. Anyway, back to this guy's work. I don't think the work is there yet to be in the New Yorker. I just
was gonna
don't.
say that too. So
So
when
it's
you say
not that he's too
really
focused.
It's really hard to put to describe why, right? Like it has the feel of something that would go in the New Yorker, but the artistry for me, and this is going to be vague, the artistry isn't there. In
true.
the actual artwork. And
For those of you guys, we'll try to describe it, and I don't want to disparage it in any way. I think there's some clever bits to it, but the style of it, the closest I'm gonna, just in my opinion, is King of the Hill type characters. Couldn't you see these characters on King of the Hill?
Yeah. It's like a more illustrated version of them.
If you look at New Yorker, what you get is, I mean, in terms of like the classic kind of drawing for New Yorker, there's like a scribbly artistic quality and a minimalism to the work. I don't know how else to describe that. Jake, you want to maybe share your screen for some New Yorker cartoons? But they're witty, they're funny, but then there's also this kind of, to use an American Idol term, this like X Factor kind of that is hard to pinpoint, but there's an artisticness with the strokes, and I feel like this work that we're looking at from this person who asked the question is a little commercial and a little cartoony. It's a weird thing to say because they are cartoons, but it's a little cartoony in its outline. So I don't think it has the feel of a New Yorker. So I can see why it's not getting in.
The New Yorker art is I would say a little more sophisticated. I heard a interview with, I think it was the editor of the New Yorker, and he was saying, I can't remember his name, but he was saying that they also were really looking for those cartoons to to hit on multiple levels. You know what I mean? So he was showing some cartoons that didn't make it in, and he was going, these are functioning on like 1 or 2 levels. And the ones that we pick, you're usually functioning on 3 levels. And he's talking about how they relate to current events, and a lot of double meanings, and I don't know, just very, very sophisticated, both in the concept and in the art. And really hard. And he was talking about that, how many submissions they get. They get hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of submissions every week.
Now, see, I would never think that cartoon we're looking at right there would get in, that you just showed, Jake, but it did. So maybe I don't know what I'm talking about.
Well, I think this right here is what I understand.
That's exactly
like
right.
a New Yorker cartoon. And to describe it, it is one line pen, scratchy line work, super, super simple, right? And then maybe a little bit of watercolor gray tone on it. You can look here at like one of these earlier ones that I was going through. It's like the penultimate New Yorker cartoon. You got a little wash of something, and really the art. I would say it's not about the art, but it is about the art. The art has to look like a New Yorker cartoon. And if you look at your stuff, Thaddeus, it's digital and it's rendered, and even though it's in black and white, it's not New Yorker. It's not what we're seeing. Yeah, for the New Yorker stuff. So that said, change up the style, and it could be you take your 10 best New Yorker cartoons you've done already, and just redo them in that very sparse style, and that might, you submit those, that might get them thinking again, right? The other thing I would say is, what do you do with rejected cartoons? Here's what I just, maybe this has already been done, but you make a book titled Rejected, and the subtitle is, here's all the work that editors have said no to. And you kickstart the thing, and you put it out there because, 1,000 people might love it, and that's enough, or 500 people might love it, and that's enough to get a book published and turn around a tidy profit as well,
I think you got to look at you got to look at content before you go off and do that. We got to look a little bit at the content. Are the jokes landing, or is the comic landing? There's one with the dog on it. Did you get it to load, Jake?
Yeah.
Okay, so there's one with the dog.
By the way, I don't like the idea of launching a Kickstarter of Rejected.
Yeah, it's not a great thing. I mean, sometimes you can do that, like Anita Kuntz or somebody like that who's done a ton of New Yorker stuff.
Yeah, if it's somebody who's done a bunch, with New Yorker, then we want to see the ones that they didn't get in, but not
right. Yeah. That's the only thing. But so I'm looking at one of his work.
That's the book you come out with after you've gotten 5 cartoons in the New Yorker.
But I'm looking at a comic single panel that he did, and it's people walking a dog. Do you guys see that one? And the dog's in the middle of the frame, and the dog is looking back at, I guess, the owners, and it says, "Oh, don't look surprised. The walking has been bad for a long time." I don't understand it. I don't understand what's happening. Do you? Am I missing that?
I mean, yeah, we could like dissect each one of these cartoons.
I want to do each one.
And the point is, well, no, I'm just saying the point I think you're trying to make is if you're not, like, all 3 of us should get the joke, right? And if one out of 3 persons doesn't get it, then maybe your joke isn't hitting, and that shouldn't be. I mean, it can be like, maybe all 3 don't find it funny, but all 3 should get the joke, right? And I think that might be your next sort of, like, your next step is mix up the style so that it matches what New Yorker's looking for a little bit, so it fits well with all the other ones. Then the second one is have like a board of advisors, to make it sound official, but have 50 people or 10 people or something like that you privately share these cartoons with, and see which ones really hit and which ones are a miss.
Yeah, I mean, it needs to be like Jake was saying. Everybody doesn't have to think it's funny, but I should at least know what the joke is intending. And with this one, I don't know what is the joke is even to find it funny. You know what I mean? So I'm confused by it. So people shouldn't be confused. Funny or not, they should know what the joke is.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. So I think, just to just to, I think an overall note is don't stop making comics, because you certainly have a knack for it and you have a desire to do it. And so keep working on it. And sometimes it takes 1,000 comics before you actually learn the craft or master that craft to the point that a New Yorker wants to accept, your work. So I wouldn't stop doing that, especially if you enjoy it. And then I think overall, I think what, like, that main question is it better to narrowly target a specialized market or broadly shop your stuff anywhere? I think you do find a niche that fits, that you fit in, and you're going to have more success there. And then you can branch out upon that. Unless your stuff is so appealing and so, like, broadly appealing that you can essentially put your artwork out there and it hits, grandmas like it, but also kids like it, but also, housewives like it, and, men in their 30s like it, right? And there are artists that's kind of few and far between for artists. So I would say focus, and you'll probably, what's our saying? Niche to get riche.
Niche to get riche. But I also have another little thing I want to add at the end. It's my Taco Bell analogy. I can tell I'm getting old because I'm telling these stupid stories. There's
a man playing violin at a Taco Bell.
The cautionary asterisk for this kind of work, and I just want to bring it up because I think about it. I'd love to know what you guys think about this. If I'm somebody who's going to work in the food industry, and I've got the choice to apply at any restaurant I want to, right? I can apply to Taco Bell and make, I don't know what minimum wage is now, because they'll say $7 an hour. What is it? $15 an hour?
15.
So 7.
15.
I got it in half. It's not. Don't tell my kid that. I keep telling him it's 7, so he works for cheap.
Right.
$15 an hour. Or I can work at, like, Ruth Chris Steakhouse, where the average bill is, $200 to $300, and I'm getting a 20% tip if I perform well. I can work at either one of those. So which one am I going to pick? The one at $15 an hour, or the one that pays, huge amounts of money? You're working multiple tables, and they're all paying $200 a table. You're going to make a lot more money. And that's the way I go here, is like, if I'm looking to be a pro, if you're just somebody who's doing comics on the side and that's just what you do for fun, but if you want to make a living, this is a cautionary place to go. I guess I would advise proceed with caution, because even if this person did get in the New Yorker, this kind of illustration work pays probably the least of any part of our industry.
That's a good point. You're right. Yep, you're right. And the thing that I keep coming back to too, it's like, are you being an illustrator, or are you running an illustration business, right? And those are two different things. An illustrator is someone who's like, I would say, has a fishing line and is going out. We're deep in the metaphors today. They have a fishing line and they're just casting, and they're trying to get fish, right? And I think an illustration business is someone who has a boat and they're going out and they know where the fish are, and they're throwing a net out and they're pulling in, the jobs and whatnot, and they're coming back and they're able to, essentially really provide, right? And so I think there's ways that you can go about doing that, and that's, do you have a professional website? Do you have, a solid social media presence? Doesn't mean that you're posting all the time, but it means if an art director shows up to your Instagram account to get just a vibe from you, that it's not like your dog and your breakfast and the trees that looked really good in this time of year, but it's like, here's my top 12 best art pieces, right? Or it's, here's what I'm currently working on. Are you doing those type of things? Do you have a system in place for generating new leads? Do you have a system in place for like contacting old jobs and saying, hey, I'm still available, just keeping you on my on keeping me on your radar? Do you have invoicing figured out? Do you have everything from bill payment to invoicing? Do you have your tax side of it figured out? Like, those are all the things that you have to understand and you have to do in order to run an illustration business. And I think a lot of artists are like, well, I love drawing. Hopefully I can get paid for it someday,
Right.
And
in some way.
And that's you got to be tactical and you got to be a little bit more focused on it,
And even if you are, it doesn't mean that you're going to have success. I'll share this because I just got this fresh in my inbox. The rejection for the Cherry Creek Arts Festival. I didn't get in. Second year in a row. I didn't get in. So
they denied you.
They denied me. Last year, I got on the waiting list. This year, they just rejected me straight up.
That's
you got to have a plan for it because it's all not going to work. So my point here is, Cherry Creek Art Festival is a fantastic venue. A lot of artists make a lot of money there, so I definitely wanted to get in. But it is not the only thing I was riding on. It's just one of 100 different things that I'm trying to do to make an income. So I basically, when I enter stuff, I assume I'm not going to get in, and then I just keep moving forward. And in this case, I didn't get in. So it happens.
Do they explain, hey, you're not a good fit, or not this year, keep trying? Or...
This one's short and sweet. It says, "Dearly, thank you for applying to the 2024 Cherry Creek Arts Festival. We regret to inform you that your work was not selected by the jury for exhibition at this year's event. Last year, I submitted twice. Once as Lee White and once as Antonio Blanco. And both of those got on the wait list. So it just depends on who's the judges, and it's very political to get in. But I was reading something this past weekend about failing quickly and failing often, and that comes with, I think, being an artist and putting yourself out there like we're talking about doing. Is even to this person who asked the question about the New Yorker, you're going to submit a bunch. And most of it isn't going to work. But some of it will. So, sort of gotta know that everything's not going to hit.
I'm on the Cherry Arts website. It says about us: Cherry Arts is a Denver-based nonprofit that believes in two fundamental things. One, access to art is for everyone, and two, artists are essential. And 3 and 4 should be, however, your art is not accessible to this. to this festival, and your art is not essential to this festival.
No, the biggest mistake that this email has is there's a name attached to it. So now I'm going to stalk them.
Well, and if you scroll down there, Jake, scroll down a little bit, you'll see that I'm actually on the board.
Oh, there's Will Terry right there.
And so, Lee, I didn't want to tell you this, but I guess
thanks a lot, Will.
Will's in charge of deciding. He's like, you guys don't hire this clown.
I'll tell you this though, for those of you guys for those of you guys who want to do the high-end art fairs, they typically have about 60 spots open, give or take, and there's around probably 3,000 applicants.
Wow.
And that's among painting, sculpture, woodworking.
Right.
I mean, there's just all kinds of stuff, so it's tough.
Does it help to like your about page for you to like look like a pretentious artist with like really tiny round black glasses and like
I mean, I had a Salvador Dali mustache even.
Yeah.
It didn't I even included $100 in my application for whoever's judging.
You didn't get that money back, did you?
I did not. It didn't send that back.
All right.
That's a bummer.
Thaddeus,
I'm kind of mad right now.
Yeah. I just want to say to Thaddeus, I hope you're not like discouraged or anything, but you do have some like actionable things that you can work on. Did we summarize that for him essentially? I think he's got it.
I think the message is really broad and go, have plan B, C, D, E. I mean, like that's one thing that the three of us have kind of mastered is we've always got other things, the next thing, because nothing lasts forever. And even if something is working for a time, it's going to run its course, and then the next thing starts up.
That's right.
Yeah.
And sometimes you have two or three next things going on at the same time.
I think that Will brought up something earlier, and I think this is something like inherent in all of us, but not like. By the way, I mean like inherited, not like we had this in us, and that is the three of us have done the illustration stuff where you throw out the fishing pole and you're waiting for jobs to come in. And there's something about running a business where where you're like building an engine to a machine, and you're like putting all the pieces together, again with the metaphors, and you do that first like ignition and the engine fires up and you see like, oh, it's working. There's something really satisfying about doing that. And I think that's why the three of us are like, well, we could go out and try to get another children's book deal, or we could start something and build out this engine and see if we can get that thing to work and have another income revenue stream. And that's not something that we were born with, but it's something that over time, I think it's just made more and more sense. The more experience you get and the more understanding you get how business works and how, and how your abilities might not just be, I can draw things, but I'm also good at communicating with other people. I'm also good at, organizing my time and organizing projects. And I like sourcing materials, and I like, doing all these other little things. And you get some sort of satisfaction on that level, not just on the art.
Yeah.
Can I bring us back to a little history really quick?
Yeah.
I think it's important for people to understand that if you zoomed way out on the illustration as a career, okay, and you looked at 100 years ago, maybe even 150 years ago till today, you would see the profitability of working in traditional markets constantly going down. This is not a new story. For us, it is, because we tend to, we live in our life and we tend to just look at what's right now happening and what happened 5 or 10 years ago, and we're looking at what might happen in the next 5 years. But we are so zoomed in that we forget that the profitability of traditional illustration has been constantly getting worse and worse. Meanwhile, the rise of self-publishing is constantly getting better and better. So it's filling in that gap. And my wife and I, Lily, we watched that Beatrix Potter movie that's on Prime.
The one with what's her name? With
the
girl from The Thing.
From The Thing, the girl that was in Jerry Maguire.
Bridget Jones.
Yeah. Did you see that one?
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I just barely watched it a month ago.
She owned 4,000 acres of prime farmland in England when she died, right? And she put in a land trust. Do you guys know any illustrators that can afford 4,000 acres anywhere?
Well, I'll do you one better. That's a modern day illustrator, and that's Sandra Boynton, who does. She started out in greeting cards and then went into children's books. Right. You've seen her. She does like the board books, like the hippo. Don't let the hippo run away with the show, or I forget what I forget what they're called. But she does a bunch of hippo stuff. And CBS Sunday Morning did an interview with her recently. And by recently, it could have been 3 years ago. I don't know. I saw it recently. But she also lives on this acreage in the country, and she sits down and draws her cartoons. And it all started because she was in college, and she's like, I don't want to wait tables. I have a cartoon idea. I'm just gonna make a couple greeting cards, and she got them, to the right people at the right place. Again, it was her like going out on her own. This is something you could do in the 80s. It might be it might be there might be a few more gate gatekeepers in the way nowadays, but like Will's saying, it's easier to do a self-publishing, like to self-publish your cards now and whatnot. But that was like her path, and she ended up dropping out of college to pursue this art thing. I think she was in law school or something like that.
The point is, quit law school and become an artist and get successful. That happens to everyone.
Here's the other point.
Let me tell you guys this.
How many lawyers do you know that love their life, right?
Yeah.
I don't know.
How many lawyers
Let's
do you
say
know?
one
that
out of three.
plan A, B, C, D, E, F, and G.
I think the lawyers like their life. I think no one else likes the lawyers. That's the problem. But the lawyers themselves, I don't think they're aware. But Beatrice Potter, speaking of Beatrice Potter, the most popular children's book of all time, really, with Peter Rabbit, that was rejected by all these publishers. If the publishers know what's so good, they rejected this book from her. She self-published 250 copies first of Peter Rabbit with her illustrations in there. And then one of the publishers who had initially rejected, after she already sold out of that full edition and then reprinted it herself twice, a publisher that had previously rejected her came back and offered it to a wider audience through publishing it. And it became, they sold 15 million copies.
Did you see that movie?
I didn't see the movie. I'm going to watch it. I haven't seen it.
Yeah, you'd love it.
It's really well done.
And I don't know how true and accurate it is. It has some cool animation.
I mean, Yoda's
her drawings.
That can't be.
Yeah, that was really neat how they brought in animation into her vision to show her vision. That was really cool.
Yeah, and that'd be great if she was tripping on mushrooms or something, and that was like the key to her.
Keep in mind too, with her success, it was at a time where, and they brought this out in the movie, that women were not supposed to go into business. They weren't supposed to be ambitious, and they weren't supposed to have careers like that. And she had to not only fight against the resistance of the publishers, but she had to fight against her own family for wanting to do it.
True.
Right. Yeah. All right. Next question from Angelo. Subject title: Do it myself? You probably touched on this question before, but a couple of episodes back, Will was talking about how much passion and love he put into making a book, only to have the market determine if it's able to be published or not. Man, has this guy been listening to us or not? He says, I'm asking because in 2020 I used the Inktober prompt list and created a comic book. I wanted to create a comic book, but wasn't sure if I could do it. I completed the project and loved it. I uploaded the KDP, that's Kindle Direct Publishing for those of you not in the know, and made some minimum sales, but overall it was a huge accomplishment and super fun. Then in 2022, I used the Inktober prompt list again, this time taking the same characters, creating concept art, and working on my coloring, lighting, tones, shadows, environments. That's, by the way, how you should be using Inktober. Yes, it's good to challenge yourself to be able to draw every day, but once you've gotten past that point, use the challenge as a scaffolding or structure to get a big chunk of a new project finished, right? Every day I'm going to work on chipping away another page of this comic or another character design for this pitch that I'm doing. Okay. He says, all of these projects I've done on my own with the help of Inktober. Now I feel strong enough to do my projects. I have a wonderful full-time teaching job, and I just want to make it cool. I just want to make cool stories, see what happens. I have comic and children's book ideas, I guess. I'm asking if it's worth contacting agents and publishers or if I should just focus on creating my own. So it's the age-old question. Do I do it for the joy of it and not worry about making it appealing to a publisher or an agent? Or do I try and, get them, try to go big with it, right? What would you, I mean, if you look at his stuff, which he said we could share, what would you recommend him do in this scenario? And I'll pull up his website here.
I mean, it doesn't hurt to send your stuff to reps and agents, right? I mean, that's a minimal. It's very low effort to,
Mm-hmm.
if you're doing a postcard mailing, to put 10 or 20 agents on your list and to get them a postcard whenever you send out a postcard. Or if you're sending out an email blast or something, it's not hard to put them on your list. So I wouldn't say there's any downside to exposing your work to an agent. Personally, I don't feel like the work is there yet to where a really good illustration rep or agent would take it. But that's also just subjective. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I don't think the work is there yet for a rep. I think there's a danger in jumping the gun. I know everybody wants to get the feedback. They want to send a portfolio to an agent and say yes or no. They hope it's a yes. But if it's a no, they want the full feedback. Why didn't they get it? And they're not going to get it because typically they're not going to give you a full rundown. The danger for jumping the gun is that all of a sudden you're seen as, first impressions are what people remember. And you don't want people to remember work that's not there yet.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and another danger is that the rep that you are going to attract is just starting out and is forced to represent the lower end of work, which your work will be seen with a bunch of lower end work.
Mm-hmm.
You really, when you get agented, you want to go with one of the best, one of the big ones, because then your work is elevated because of look at the company that you're keeping, right?
Right. I think looking at his stuff too, like with this portfolio, you're going to want to get rid of everything but like the first 6 illustrations. Everything beyond that, maybe those comic pages you could keep, but everything beyond that really just looks like practice time and like you learning and growing, and not like a finished illustration that you want to share that shows that you can illustrate. And then have those 6 be sort of like this groundwork and this foundation for new growth and new illustrations that you're going to build on top of that. So one thing though, is if you want to go down the agent publishing route, it is a game of sort of like if you want a little bit more guaranteed success, it is a game of guessing what the publisher is wanting right now and not just making the thing for yourself and hoping that a publisher like signs off on it. So you're going to want to look at, go down to Barnes and Noble, look at all the books that came out this spring, and just kind of hold up your work and see if it fits in with that. If not, adjust accordingly and be like, okay, there's definitely a look and mine fits in here, and then go to an agent and say, listen, I'm ready for, the big time. I want to work with publishers, and then they'll try and fit you with the publisher that they think that your work will be, work with, right? That, and maybe you want to try that, take a couple of years and go down that path and see if you could do that. That's a great mountain to climb, and just try to check off all the little boxes trying to get that. Our Children's Book Pro course is like going to be instrumental in like helping you break into children's books, or at least create the kind of work that needs to be there for you to break into it, right? The other thing is there's a lot to be said, like you said, about just having fun, making your art, doing what sort of appeals to you and a small audience, and not having all this pressure with your artwork. And a lot of times that kind of ruins art for people. It used to be like this fun outlet, and now it's like my job. And even dream jobs, like dream job, one word in that is job. It's still a job, right? And there's days that you don't want to do it, and you can't be that. You can't be that person if you're a professional. Like a professional shows up and does the work whether they want to do it or not. And so if that's not in your makeup, if that's not in your creative DNA, then you're just going to be frustrated trying to go down that really professional path. And so it's, half of this is like figuring out who you are, figuring out yourself,
Hey, let me ask
Lee,
you
did
guys
you
a
have anything
question,
you wanted
if
to
you
add to
don't
that?
mind. You guys ready for this? Not
guess,
trying to,
yeah, you're
not
gonna
trying
ask
to, not trying to trigger Will on this one. I'm really not. Promise you, Will. But I was having this discussion with my wife the other night, and we were talking about the screenwriters strike that happened a little while ago. You guys remember that? Would you guys be interested in one of the problems that we see in illustration is nobody really knows what's going on. Everybody's trying to sort of wade through this river themselves, you know what I mean? And then they don't know what other people are experiencing, what the standard is. Would you guys be interested in if it was possible, an illustrators union that once you did like one or two professional jobs you could be a part of that would offer some kind of negotiating baseline and then some kind of insurance policy, health insurance policy, something to organize this kind of wild west that is illustration? What do you think?
That just, I absolutely. If there was one available, I'd sign up and join it. I don't know how you get that to work.
Well, I mean, the screenwriters did. How can they? And also the Actors Guild. What is it? Screen Actors Guild. They got it to work. So there's creative unions for these other things, and you could think like, okay, so one actor is in the background of The Walking Dead. And, does he get in or does, Brad Pitt get in? Of course, that's two wildly different scenarios, but there's still a union.
So let's look at...
Here's an inherent problem with it.
Yeah, let's hear it.
And I comparing to screenwriters, I don't know all the pros and cons of how theirs is functioning. But one problem that we have is that some people's styles take them a few minutes and some people's styles take them, a week to do. So if you're doing collective bargaining, you're going to hurt the person who has a more detailed style.
People don't pay based on style, though. Isn't that a faulty argument? Because like if I take a long time and you're quick, it doesn't mean I should charge more because the value is in where the illustration is going and who the client is, not necessarily how long it takes you. Right?
I agree to a point, but like if I'm an individual and I say, and someone asks me to do work right now, let's say, Lee, your style takes you a week to do what my style takes me to do in a few hours. Okay.
Sure.
So if you're approached and you do the math, you're offered, $1,000 for something, you might say, I would love to work for you, but I can't for that. I'm going to need X, and you ask for more. Meanwhile, I'm jazzed because it's $1,000 for 2 hours of work, And if we're under an agreement where prices are set, what I would see is an erosion of those higher rendered styles would just be weeded out. We would lose those. So that would be. But
isn't that self-selecting now anyway? Because, like you said earlier, have rates gone up for us or down over time? They've gone down, and so that's self-regulating anyway. If somebody has a highly rendered style, they're in trouble right now with what our budgets are. I've never seen budgets.
Yeah, but I do know like so. Take somebody like what's his name? Oh shoot. He's
Adam Rex.
No, he does well. Okay, yeah, take an Adam Rex, who has a more highly rendered style. He's the. I'm thinking of Greg Manchis. Actually, that's who I was thinking of. So I know that, like, I've heard him speak a few times, and he said, typically this publisher doesn't pay this amount, but I was able to negotiate for more because it just takes me a long time. And I just told them, take it or leave it. This is what I'm going to need for this job. And they're like, well, we never do this, but we're going to do it in this situation. So I think you're right, Lee. To some extent, it's self-regulating. I'm just not a union guy. I don't want to be beholden. I don't want to be told not to work, or
I just wonder if that would take out some of the.
When there's a strike.
Yeah.
I think at the high end, you can always, I mean, like take the actors, for example, they're able to push their rates up if it warrants it, or they can hold out for a higher rate. So it doesn't mean that like, because there's a union that they say, oh, you have to work for $1,000 a day. You know, Brad Pitt isn't working for $1,000 a day. I promise you that. But at the low end, it protects that group. And I guess that's what I'm wondering is like, I've seen the rates go lower and lower. I've seen health insurance go higher and higher. And I'm just wondering, and then we're all trying to figure it out by ourselves. It seems like everybody's just isolated without, you know, nobody really knows how much other people are making from a job. And because of that, it seems like the publishers hold all the cards unless you're a Greg Manchess, where you can demand that because you know they want you because you're Greg Manchess.
Right.
That's just what that's the conversation that we were having.
Like, how do you get like essentially minimums? Like, so every artist is making, you know, 30,000 per children's book minimum. Right. Some kind of minimum, but yeah, whatever that scale would be. And then
I think another thing that it will do that is a negative is it takes away the freedom from someone like me as a small business owner, or you, if you have a project and you want to hire an illustrator to work on your project, and all of a sudden the union has lifted these minimum fees up really high, it hurts. It generally hurts the smaller businesses, and it eliminates the work there. There's other things that fall
Let
out,
me
like
dig into that first. Are you saying that that would hurt your ability to pay a low wage? Is that what you're saying?
I'm saying.
Well, what if
so for the employer, if the employer is a really small business, a guild like that would put the fees out of reach. It would raise the fees up to where they can't afford it. So a lot of the low end jobs that we use for entry level, where we cut our teeth to get into the business, would go away. And that's one thing that
they would just have to hire somebody out of the union, which happens all the time too. I mean, that doesn't stop people from making independent films. The Screen Actors Guild.
But
you know what I mean?
I don't think you understand what I'm saying. I'm saying,
no, I do.
saying you, Lee, as a small business owner who has a budget of, I mean, let's throw some numbers. Let's say you there's no way that you could afford on this project to spend more than a couple $1,000s, but you just need some illustration, and the union has that price set at $5,000, just as an example. And
that's sort of proving my point, is that you wouldn't be able to get an established illustrator for that job. What you'd have to do is you'd have to hire a student to do that lower paying job, because they're not in the union yet, which once you pay them the low amount and then they do the professional job, then they would be in the union. Then they would be eligible to be in the union because they've done a professional job or whatever that criteria is. Mm-hmm. So
at least right now our antitrust laws are preventing that from happening, thank goodness.
But I don't understand how come they can have a union and we can't?
Because the reason that we can't is because in our country, in the U.S. anyway, we have rules against collective bargaining from businesses, right? So we're all independent contractors. We're all independent businesses, and you can't. It's called collusion, right? I mean, like.
But aren't actors the same way? Aren't writers the same way?
I don't know.
See, I wonder too if, like, with acting and writing, if it can be a little bit more like standardized, like. A script is, a certain amount of words and it's a certain amount of length, and you could just pay a certain amount for it. I don't, if there's a screenwriter listening, pipe in on this.
I would love to know.
So, comment on this.
Yeah,
this
the three
episode.
of us bumbling around through this, we're not experts on it, but
no, we're not at all.
I hate unions, and I'll tell you another reason why: of the stupidity that comes out from so many unions. Because once you set up a union, the union presidency is looking to expand their control and their reach, and they never stop. So you end up with laws that say, if for the United Auto Workers, if an employee, this was actually in place when they had to restructure Ford and Chevy and all those, around 2012, I believe, they had a law passed where, well, not a law, but a union. The Ford accepted this as a negotiating term that they agreed to. If an employee at Ford lived there, within 200 miles of the Ford factory, and they had their job. If Ford decided to move that factory more than 200 miles away, the employee could choose to sit home and draw the same salary and not have to move, not lose their job. Like if Ford says, "Hey, we're moving the factory," that's ridiculous to me. That
I'm even more for the union now because I just want to sit home and get a paycheck.
Another one is when we go to Denver. When we go to Denver Comic-Con, we can't use wheels to get our stuff into the venue.
That one's frustrating.
So they have a sign up that says no hand carts, no dollies.
I know. I'm not saying it's a perfect system, and all that stuff is goofy.
They don't ever stop. They try to expand their control and their reach into these levels that go to the ridiculous.
No, I agree with that. That stuff is stupid. I mean, and that's kind of where I'm not saying that they've got it all figured out and it's a perfect system, but man, our system seems wildly ineffective too. And again, because we don't have anything on our side for bargaining or for negotiating, the rates have gone lower and lower and lower and lower to where I'm seeing some offers now that is like half or even 75% less than offers I got when I first started in 2002.
Mm-hmm. But I would argue that that's market forces too. I don't think it's necessarily that the publishers are saying, "Hey, we could afford to pay what we've been paying, but we're going to pay Lee, offer him so much less just because."
Well, Simon and Schuster last year made more than they've ever made.
Okay, but that's not just that's anecdotal. I mean, like there are a lot of I mean, like if you talk to people, I mean, like our conversation earlier, we went from Beatrix Potter, we have Maurice Sendak, we have all these legacy author illustrators. Who's the guy that did the Caterpillar? Eric Carle.
Mm-hmm.
And you have that era where if you got published back then. Yeah, and like I met this guy. I'm not going to mention his name here, but I went out to lunch with him the other day, and he's in his mid 70s, and I mean he came from a time where every book that he made at least $50,000 on in the advance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, and this was in the 80s.
Right.
In the 80s, $50,000 was like $150,000 today, or at least 100. I mean, like, and that was one book, and he was getting book after book after book, and he was like.
Right.
I mean, he's got this huge house. He's got all, he's got all these toys and everything, and he's like, man, publishing was so good to me. Well, they didn't have to. I mean, that was on 5%. They didn't have to give him even that much, and he would have done it. 5% used to be a really nice carrot to dangle in front of illustrators, and it's not now. And I would argue more because there are so many more publishers, so many more interests, so many more illustrators. That every book is selling less than it used to. So I mean that's
if you look at the
market being fractured.
But if you look at the market, what happens with publishing, they have in my opinion, a terrible business model. Their business model is a shotgun approach, quarterly. Just put out as many books as they can, it seems like, and hope one hits that will pay for all the ones that didn't sell. If you had a minimum, I'm just kind of. Just a thought experiment. If you had a minimum that was, let's go to your $30,000 number, $30,000 per book, what would happen then? A lot less books would be published, which means that, and then a lot more advertising would be focused on those books because they need to make the money back, which would be a fantastic thing for our industry. Now, a lot less illustrators would work, but the quality would go up. And the amount of people, when they're working as a pro illustrator, would become a livable wage versus this sort of race to the bottom that the publishers are doing now. They're offering less and less and less, and knowing that somebody's going to take it, whether the quality's there or not, and then they just shotgun these books out there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the people that are going to win under this natural market evolution is going to be the authors and illustrators who are more entrepreneurial and who decide to make their own products.
I agree with that. I mean, that's
profit margin
because
is so
they've
much
taken
greater
away
now.
they've taken away the market basically in going the traditional route at this point, which is why all three of us have gone the other way.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
Unless you
just a thought experiment.
Yeah. I mean,
Comment.
at the end
I'd
of the
love to
day,
hear what people think. So comment if you would
Yeah.
join the union and if you'll vote for me as president of the union.
sounds good. And with that, let's wrap this up, shall we?
All right. We didn't get to our last question because of my stupid exercise.
We'll hit them. We'll hit them next time. That's fine. That's fine. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. 3 Point Perspective is made possible by SVSLearn, where becoming a great illustrator starts. Your hosts are Lee White, Will Terry, and I'm Jake Parker. You can find Will Terry at Will Terry Art on Instagram, and also do a little search on YouTube. You can find Will's videos on YouTube. Lee White can be found at leewhiteillustration.com and also at leewhiteillo. And I can be found at mrjakeparker.com and at Jake Parker on Instagram. Podcast is produced by Daniel Tu. That's danieltu.co. Special thanks to our keeper of curriculum, Austin Shirtliff, Shownotes Wrangler, Lily Howell, and Chief Operations Officer, Lisa Fott. Now, go draw something.